I was holding her hand when she destroyed my life. She was dying, machines beeping, Lagos traffic outside the window not caring the way Lagos never cares. And this woman who had smiled at my wedding with eyes that never smiled, reached for my hand and said, "Ada, I need to tell you what I did. 9 years. 9 years I spent asking myself what was wrong with me, why my husband kept drifting, why my marriage kept bleeding from a wound I could never find." She knew. She had always known. Because she made it happen. Stay with me. Because what she confessed in that hospital room will change the way you see every relationship in your life. I was standing in the hospital corridor when she called my name. Not my full name. Not Adaeze. She called me Ada. The way she used to call me when she thought nobody was listening. When it was just the two of us and she forgot to be cold. I had not heard her say my name like that in 4 years. I walked into that room not knowing that the next 20 minutes would take a sledgehammer to every memory I had built my life on. I thought I was walking in to say goodbye to a dying woman. I did not know I was walking into a confession. She was lying in that bed at St. Nicholas Hospital in Lagos, and she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Chidinma Okafor, the woman who had ruled her home like a queen and her son like a possession. The woman who had smiled at my wedding with eyes that never smiled. The woman I had tried to love for 9 years because I loved her son. And because my mother always said, when you marry a man, you marry his people. She reached for my hand. I gave it to her because I am Igbo and we do not refuse the dying. And then she said, "Ada, I need to tell you what I did. I want you to stop here with me. Before I tell you what she said, before I take you back to the beginning of this story, I want you to feel what I felt in that moment. Because my whole life, everything I thought was real, was sitting in that room waiting to be dismantled by an old woman who was afraid to meet God with secrets. I was 34 years old. I had a husband I loved. I had a home I built with my own hands and my own tears. I had survived things inside that marriage that I told nobody about. Things I stayed through because I believed it was worth it. And in that hospital room, I found out that everything I had survived had been arranged. Sit with me. Let me tell you from the beginning. My name is Adaeze Okafor, born Adaeze Mosu in Enugu, the last daughter of a man who believed that a woman's education was her best bride price. My father, Chief Linus Omosu, built his wealth through several engineering contracts and built his daughters through books. There were 4 of us. I was the youngest, and according to everyone who knew our family, the most stubborn. My mother, Ngozi Nwosu, used to say that I came out of the womb arguing. She said it with love, most of the time. I grew up in Enugu, but went to university in Lagos. Studied economics at Unilag. I loved Lagos immediately. The noise, the energy, the way the city did not apologize for itself. I was 22 when I graduated. 23 when I got my first job at a financial consulting firm in Victoria Island. I was 25 when I met Emeka Okafor. He walked into a mutual friend's birthday dinner at a restaurant in Lekki, and I noticed him before he noticed me. Not because he was the most handsome man in the room, though he was handsome enough. I noticed him because he was laughing. not performing laughter the way Lagos men sometimes do when they want to be seen. He was genuinely laughing at something his friend said, and his whole face was in it. I thought, this one is real. We talked that night for 3 hours while the party moved around us. He was an architect, owned a small but growing firm on the mainland. He was Igbo, from Anambra, from a family in Onitsha. His father had died when he was 19. He was the only son. He had 2 sisters and a mother. He told me about his mother the way men tell you about something precious and fragile at the same time, with pride and with a kind of tenderness that made me think, this man knows how to love. He said, my mother sacrificed everything for me after my father died. She worked as a seamstress and a trader to send me through school. I understood a son's devotion. What I did not understand yet was the difference between devotion and possession. We dated for 2 years. They were the most alive 2 years of my life. Emeka was thoughtful and funny, and he had a way of listening to me that made me feel seen in a way I had not felt before. We argued sometimes about money, about priorities, about how much time he gave to work, but we always found our way back to each other. He proposed on a Sunday evening at his apartment. No restaurant, no public spectacle, just him and a ring his grandmother had left him, and a speech that made me cry because it was honest. He did not promise me perfection. He said, Ada, I do not know what is ahead, but I know I want to figure it out with you. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The trouble did not start at the proposal. It started the day he took me to Onitsha to meet his mother. Chidinma Okafor opened her door and looked at me the way a jeweler looks at a stone she did not order. Not with hatred, with assessment. She was a tall woman, still striking in her 60s, with the kind of posture that comes from a lifetime of refusing to shrink. She welcomed me politely. She fed me well. She called me Ne and touched my face. But her eyes never warmed. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself she was a woman who had raised her son alone, and it was natural to be protective. I told myself that I would win her over with time, with patience, with consistency. I spent 9 years trying to win over a woman who had already made her decision about me. And I never knew why until that hospital room. We got married in December. A big Igbo wedding in Onitsha, because that was where Emeka's family was from. And Chidinma Okafor was not the kind of woman whose son would have a quiet wedding somewhere else. My family came from Enugu in a convoy. My mother wore gold ashoebi and cried through the entire ceremony. My father gave a speech that made even Emeka's uncles laugh. It was a beautiful day. I have the photograph somewhere. I used to look at them often. Now, I am not sure I can. We moved into our home in Lekki, a 4-bedroom house that we had spent 8 months furnishing together, arguing over paint colors and debating the right sofa, and laughing at ourselves for caring so much. It was ours. That house was the most solid thing I had ever owned. The first year of marriage was good. I say that plainly because it deserves to be said plainly. We were happy. We were building something. Emeka's architecture firm was growing. My career at the consulting firm had moved forward and I was managing a small team. We traveled twice. Once to Accra for our anniversary. Once to Dubai because Emeka had a client meeting and I tagged along, and we turned it into something beautiful. Chidinma came to stay with us for the first time 6 months after the wedding. She said it was a visit. She stayed for 3 months. I want to be fair. I want to be honest. She was not a monster. She cooked for us. And she could cook the way only Igbo mothers can cook. The kind of food that makes you feel held from the inside. She kept the house tidy. She was generous with praise when Emeka did anything right. But when it came to me, there was always something slightly off. A comment about the way I seasoned my soup, a question about why I was at work so late, asked in a tone that was not quite a question. A habit of consulting Emeka on household decisions without including me in the conversation, as if I were a guest in my own home. Small things, the kind of things you cannot point to without sounding petty, the kind of things that accumulate. I spoke to Emeka about it once, gently, carefully. He listened. He said, "Ada, she is old-fashioned. She does not mean anything by it. She loves you in her own way." I accepted this because I loved him and because I wanted peace. The second year of marriage, I got pregnant. I cannot describe what that felt like. We had been trying quietly and hoping openly, and when the test came back positive, I sat on the bathroom floor of our Lekki home and I wept with a kind of joy I had never felt before. Emeka came in and found me on the floor, and he dropped to his knees and held me, and we both cried together. I called my mother, screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Emeka called his mother. Chidinma arrived the next day. She did not call first. She arrived with bags, with her prayer book, with instructions. I told myself it was love. I told myself this was what Igbo families did. This was what I had grown up seeing. When there is a pregnancy, the women come. But there was something about the way she took over my kitchen, my schedule, my prenatal appointments that began to feel less like support and more like management. She had opinions about which doctor I should see. She had opinions about what I should eat. She had opinions about how much time I was spending at work. And she and Emeka would have long conversations at night in low voices that stopped when I walked into the room. I was 7 months pregnant when I first heard the word. I was walking from the bedroom to the kitchen, and the door to the living room was not fully closed. And I heard Chidinma say to Emeka very clearly, "That woman is not right for you. She never was." I stood in the hallway and I did not move. Emeka said something I could not hear. His mother said, "I know what I know. I see things you do not see." I went back to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. My baby moved inside me, one strong kick, as if to say, "I am here, Mama, stay." I stayed. But something changed in me that night. Something quiet and permanent, like a hairline crack in a beautiful wall. You cannot see it from a distance, but it is there. And over time, everything leaning on that wall begins to feel less safe. My daughter was born in April. We named her Chisom. It means God is with me on this journey. Emeka chose it, and I loved it immediately because it felt like a prayer and a declaration at the same time. She was perfect. You know how every parent says that, and you smile and nod, but you do not fully believe them. But Chisom was genuinely, quietly, impossibly perfect. She had Emeka's forehead and my eye, and a temperament so calm it made the nurses at the hospital laugh with surprise. The first few months, even with Chidinma in the house, even with the tension that lived underneath everything, there was joy, real joy. The kind that comes from watching a person you made discover the world for the first time. But Chidinma stayed. She stayed for 6 months after Chisom was born. And when she finally returned to Onitsha, she called every day, sometimes twice. She and Emeka would speak for 45 minutes, an hour. There were whole conversations about our home, about our daughter, about decisions we were making. And I was not part of them. I started to notice other things. Emeka's mood after his mother's calls. How he would sometimes become distant afterward, or irritable. Or he would question things I had done that he had not questioned before. I would notice a shift in him, subtle but real, like a dial being turned by an unseen hand. I want to be clear. Emeka was not a cruel man. He never raised his hand. He was not the kind of husband whose name makes a woman lower her eyes. But there is a cruelty that does not use fists. There is a way of slowly making a person feel like they are not quite enough, not quite right, not quite what was expected, without ever saying those words directly. And I began to feel it more and more as the years passed. By our 4th year of marriage, there were things we did not talk about. Whole wombs in our relationship that had been quietly locked. He traveled more for work. He was physically present, but increasingly somewhere else. When I tried to reach for him, sometimes he was there. Sometimes I could feel the space he had put between us, invisible but solid. I went to therapy. A counselor in Ikoyi, a woman named Dr. Farida Bello, Nigerian and warm and sharp in all the right ways. She helped me name things I had been feeling but not saying. She helped me understand that what I was experiencing had a shape, had a pattern. She asked me once, "Adaeze, do you feel safe in your marriage?" I thought about it for a long time. I said, "I feel safe from harm, but I do not always feel safe from being erased." She wrote something down. I kept going to therapy. I kept showing up for my marriage. I kept being Emeka's wife and Chisom's mother and my company's deputy director and my own person all at once, the way Nigerian women do. We carry everything and we carry it beautifully, and almost nobody asks what it costs us. It was in our 6th year that things shifted in a new and terrible direction. We had been trying for a second child for 2 years by then. It was not happening. The doctor said everything was medically fine with both of us. They called it unexplained secondary infertility, and they said it happened, and they offered us options. Chidinma, when she found out you were trying and struggling, became a different kind of present. She sent herbs, she sent prayer warriors, she sent a pastor from Onitsha who I had never met to come pray over our bedroom while I was at work. I came home to find a man I did not know sitting in my living room with anointing oil sent by my mother-in-law, without my knowledge or my consent. I called Emeka. He said, "Ada, she's just trying to help." I said, "Emeka, a strange man is sitting in our bedroom." He said, "He is a man of God." That was the night I understood that I had been losing a war I did not know I was in. I slept in the guest room that night. Emeka did not come to find me. In the morning, he apologized. He held me and he said he was sorry. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him, and because the alternative was too large to look at directly. But 3 weeks later, his mother called, and I picked up the phone by mistake, and I heard her say to someone in the background, "Emeka has to understand. That marriage was a mistake from the beginning. I made sure of it." I stood in my kitchen in Lekki. I looked at the countertops we had chosen together. The photographs on the refrigerator. The child's drawing Chisom had given me taped to the wall. I made sure of it. What did she mean? What had she done? I did not ask Emeka. Not yet. Because some part of me knew that I was not ready for the answer. And some part of me knew that he might not have won. The answer was coming. Just not the way I expected. It was in our 8th year of marriage that Emeka told me he wanted to separate. He said it on a Tuesday evening. He came home from work and he sat down. And he looked at me with eyes that were tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. And he said, Ada, I think we need some space. I remember looking at him and feeling nothing for a moment, then feeling everything at once. I asked him why. He said, we want different things. We have grown in different directions. I think we have been making each other unhappy for a long time. I said, has your mother said something? He looked away. That look told me everything. I said, Emeka, I need you to answer me honestly. Is this coming from you or is this coming from her? He said, it is coming from me. I did not believe him, but I also could not prove anything. And a woman who cannot prove anything learns very quickly that she has two choices. She can fight in the dark, or she can wait for the light. I waited. We separated. Not officially, not legally, but in the way that some marriages separate quietly. He moved into the guest room. We still appeared together at family events. We still managed school runs and work schedules and dinner conversations. But the intimacy was gone. The warmth was gone. I told my mother. She cried. She said, go and fight for your marriage. She said, these things happen. Walk through it. I told Dr. Farida. She said, Adaeze, you cannot save a marriage by yourself. Both people have to be present. Are you sure he is present? I was not sure. I called Chidinma once. I called her directly, adult to adult, woman to woman. I said, Mama, I know things are not well between Emeka and me. I am asking you if there is anything you know. If there is anything you have said or done that has affected our marriage, please tell me so we can fix it. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, I don't know what you are talking about. Then she said, take care of my son. Then she hung up. That was 2 years before she called me to her deathbed. In those 2 years, I found a version of myself I had not met before. A harder version, a quieter version. I poured myself into my work and I was promoted to director. I poured myself into Chisom and she grew into a brilliant, curious young woman who told me once, Mama, you are the strongest person I know. I poured myself into therapy and into prayer and into the kind of honest self-examination that strips away everything you have been told about yourself and asks, who are you actually? I was still married. Emeka and I had not moved to divorce. There was something holding us in the same orbit even when we were not speaking well. I do not fully understand what it was. History, maybe. The weight of what we had been to each other. Chisom. Always Chisom. And then his mother got sick. Cancer. Diagnosed fast and advancing faster. From the first diagnosis to the hospital room was less than 4 months. I went to see her. Of course I went. Because whatever she had done, she was still Emeka's mother. She was still the grandmother of my daughter. And because I am Igbo and we do not let the sick face death alone. But she did not want Emeka in the room when she called my name. She sent him to get something from the pharmacy, something she did not need. I realized that later. She sent him away to be alone with me. And I walked in and she said, Ada, I need to tell you what I did. She told me slowly. Her voice was not the voice I remembered, the sharp, commanding voice that had filled rooms and silenced conversations. It was thin now, careful, like she was measuring every word because she knew she had a limited number of words left. She said, when Emeka first brought you home, I liked you. I want you to know that. I saw who you were. I saw your character. You were exactly the kind of woman my son deserved. looked at her. He said, "That is why I was afraid. I did not understand." She said, "When Emeka's father died, I made a promise. To myself, to God, to Emeka's father's grave, that I would not let another woman take my son completely. I watched what happened to my own mother when my father chose his wife over her in every dispute. I watched my mother become invisible in her own family, and I swore I would never be a second priority, not even to a wife." She stopped. She took a breath. She said, "So when you came, and I saw how much Emeka loved you, truly loved you, more than I had ever seen him love anything, I became afraid, because I knew I was going to lose him to you. I felt something cold move through me." She said, "I did not do big things. I want you to understand that. I did not lie to him about you. I did not tell him you are unfaithful or wicked. I was more careful than that." She said, "I planted seeds, small thoughts, quiet questions. When something was fine between you, I would find the angle that made it seem less fine. When you made a decision he was happy with, I would wait, and I would say, in a gentle voice, 'Are you sure she was thinking of you or of herself?' I would say it once, just once, and then I would leave it." She said, "I made sure every small conflict between you was watered. I made sure his doubts about you were fed, not with lies, with careful, patient questions. The kind that a mother asks out of concern. The kind that a son cannot argue with because they come from love." I was holding her hand. I do not know why I was still holding her hand. She said, "The separation was mine. He came to me when things were strained between you, and I did not say, 'Leave her.' I never said that. I said, 'Emeka, do you think she's really happy? Do you think a little space might help you both?' I planted the idea and I watered it, and I let him think it was his own." She looked at me then, really looked at me. She said, "You are never the problem, Ada. You are never the wrong woman. I was wrong. I was afraid, and I was selfish, and I destroyed something good because I could not bear to be ordinary in my son's life." Tears were running down her face. Old tears, the kind that have been waiting a long time. She said, "I need you to forgive me. Not for me. I am dying and I know what I deserve. For yourself. Because you spent years believing there was something wrong with you. And there was not. There was never anything wrong with you." I sat in that room for a very long time after she stopped speaking. She fell asleep holding my hand. The machines beeped softly. Outside, Lagos was doing what Lagos does. Moving and honking and living without pausing for anyone's grief. I thought about 9 years of my life. I thought about every night I had asked myself what I was doing wrong. I thought about the therapy sessions where I had unpacked myself looking for the flaw. I thought about Emeka's eyes going somewhere I could not reach, and me standing at the edge of that distance wondering what I had done. I thought about the hairline crack in the wall that had started with a conversation I was not meant to hear. And I sat there, in a hospital in Lagos, holding the hand of the woman who had engineered my pain. And I let myself feel every single thing. I did not scream. I did not rage. I just sat there and I let myself grieve something very specific. Not my marriage, not even my loss. I grieved the version of me who had spent 9 years believing she was not enough. That woman deserved better. She deserved to know the truth a long time ago. Chidinma Okafor died 4 days later She did not get my forgiveness before she died. Not because I refused it, but because forgiveness like that does not come in 4 days. It does not come in 4 months. It is a long walk, and I am still on it. Emeka did not know what his mother had confessed to me. Not at first. I did not tell him at the hospital. I did not tell him at the burial. I sat through the Onitsha funeral with a face that was doing the work of a face, while my mind was somewhere else entirely. After the funeral, after the family had gone and the house was quiet, I asked Emeka to sit with me. I told him everything. I told him slowly and clearly, the way you speak to someone when you want them to hear every word and not be able to say later that they misunderstood. I told him what his mother said. I told him how she said it. I told him about the seeds, the questions, the patient, careful architecture of doubt she had built inside his mind about me. I watched his face while I talked. There is a particular kind of pain that looks like a man realizing he has been used. Not used by a stranger. Used by the person he loved most before he met me. The person he had defended. The person he had chosen over and over in 1,000 small ways at my expense. He was very quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Ada, I did not know." I said, "I know you did not know." He said, "I am so sorry." I looked at him. This man I had loved for 11 years now. This man who had made me cry with an honest proposal in a simple apartment. This man who had also, without knowing, allowed his mother to tend a garden of doubt in his heart, while I stood outside it wondering why things were dying. I said, "Emeka, I believe that you are sorry. And I believe that you did not know exactly what she was doing. But I also need you to hear this. You felt it. You felt the distance growing. You felt yourself pulling away from me, and instead of coming to me and saying, 'Something feels wrong. Let us look at it together,' you let the distance be. You let it grow. Some of what happened between us was hers, but some of it was yours." He did not argue with me. That mattered. We talked for a long time that night. Longer than we had talked in years. Not with the walls up. Not with the carefully managed distance we had learned to maintain. We talked the way we had talked when we were 25 and 27, and the world was wide open. I do not want to make this sound simple. It was not simple. It is not simple now. What his mother did was not a small thing. 9 years of quiet, deliberate undermining is not a small thing. The damage it does to a marriage, to a woman's sense of herself, to a man who was being used without knowing it, that damage has a weight and a texture. And it does not disappear because the woman who caused it is dead. We are not back to where we were. I do not know if we will ever be back to where we were. And I have had to make peace with the fact that some things, once broken in a particular way, become a different shape when they are repaired. Not a lesser shape, just different. What I know is this: we are trying. For the first time in years, genuinely trying. With a marriage counselor in Abuja who sees us every 2 weeks. With difficult conversations that we no longer avoid. With Emeka showing up in ways I had stopped expecting. And with Chisom, our daughter, who is now 19 and wise in the way young women who have watched their mothers fight to remain whole tend to be wise. She knows something changed between her parents after her grandmother died. She has not asked me for the full story yet. When she does, I will tell her the truth. Because she deserves to know what it looks like when a woman chooses fear over love and what it costs everyone around her. I want to talk to you now, directly. If you have stayed with me this long, you know what this story cost me to tell. It cost me the comfortable version of my past, the version where my marriage struggled because of vague, unnamed forces. Now I have names for things, and names are heavy. But I am grateful for the weight. Because here is what I have learned. There are people in your life who love you and fear you at the same time. Fear that your presence will diminish them. Fear that your love will rearrange the order they have built. And sometimes those people, rather than face that fear honestly, find ways to manage you, to quietly arrange the world so that you are just slightly off balance, so that you keep reaching for ground and never quite finding it. This is not something only mothers-in-law do. It is something anyone can do. A friend, a sibling, a colleague, a partner. The tools are the same. Small words, patient questions, the gentle, consistent application of doubt. And if this is happening to you, I want you to hear what I needed someone to say to me a long time ago. The ground is not moving. You are not the problem. You are not too much and you are not too little. You are not difficult. You are not the thing that needs to be fixed. If you keep trying to locate yourself and you keep coming up empty, sometimes it is because someone else has been moving the mirror. Chidinma Okafor died with her confession. She was afraid of losing her son, and she spent 20 years making sure the woman her son loved would never feel completely secure. And in doing so, she lost him anyway. Because you cannot control love. You can only damage it. I do not know if I will ever fully forgive her. I told you that. Forgiveness that size is a long walk. But I have stopped blaming myself for not seeing it sooner. I have stopped punishing the woman I was in that marriage. She was doing everything right. She was showing up. She was staying. She was loving. She was fighting for something that was being quietly dismantled by someone she could not see. She did not fail. She was failed. And now she knows it. And now she gets to decide what to do with a marriage that has had its false walls knocked down. What is left when the interference is removed? Whether there's enough real love underneath the managed distance to build something true. I think there is. I think there was always enough love. That was never the question. The question was whether the love could survive the person standing between it and the light. I am still finding out. But I am finding out with my eyes open now. With my voice. With my name fully in my mouth. Adaeze. Not Ada. Not Emeka's wife. Not the woman who could not hold her marriage together. Not the daughter-in-law who was never quite right. Adaeze Ngosu Okafor. A woman who stayed through a war she did not know she was in. Came out the other side and is still standing. If you are in a war like mine, I see you. Stay standing.